in a second.
Yeah, it's streaming live on YouTube. Says so right here on my screen.
Okay.
It does?
Just
Yeah,
keep yourself. Yeah, it does. It says it should say on the top left there.
Yep, it's live.
Yep. So we're live. That's good. And then once Kathy gets in, we can get started. So it looks like we have Lou, Kathleen, Adam, Sandy, who else? Jean.
Is Kathy an official member of the committee again?
Public member, yeah.
Yes, she
Public
is.
member.
Happy to have her back.
Or to do Kathy's favorite impression of herself, which I won't do because we're now streaming live. Do we have a quorum?
Yes, but I was just waiting for Kathy because she was just joining. So
I'm not seeing everybody, so that's why I'm asking.
yep. Let's just give her one more moment.
Are the presenters all in attendance?
Do we have someone? Let's see.
Yes,
Who's
Ophelia's
speaking?
joined and Sarah's joined.
Sarah. Sarah's here. Oh, I see. She's on this list. Hello, Sarah.
Hi there.
Hi.
I'm just getting a message from my colleagues about the Zoom, so I'm going to re-forward them the information. So
Okay.
I'll get them on as soon as I can.
That's okay. We can wait another minute or two if you'd like. A few of us internally had some problems today too, so don't want to rush you. Any update on Kathy?
She hasn't emailed me back. That was 5 minutes ago when she last emailed me.
Okay, we'll give her a few more seconds.
Hi, I'm just checking in attendance. We still don't have Wells or Larry Shire, and we're waiting for Kathy, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. I will now mute myself again.
Hi, Letty.
Thank you. Thank you,
Hi,
Letty.
everybody. I'll
good
mute
hearing
And
from you.
Jim
myself.
Collins as well is still
Okay,
missing.
thank you. So I've got Sandro Adam, I've got Jim Collins, Kathleen Kelly, Kavita, Sandy, Jean, and Lou. Kathy,
That's
we're
right.
waiting for myself. We have Molly, Jesus, and Cody. And I see Sarah Nielsen from DPR and Ophelia Rivas from DDC.
Mm-hmm.
You've got
She
it.
seems to be on as well. Yep.
Oh, I'm trying.
Are you doing the minutes this evening?
Wouldn't you think so?
It sounds like it. I didn't realize it was you. Okay,
Yes,
great.
yes. And I've also arranged that Cody's going to send me the verbatim transcript.
Good.
And so that,
Wonderful.
you know, this way I could listen and
Thank you.
yeah.
I just texted Kathy and didn't get an answer yet, so
Okay. Well, we can
Is
go
she
ahead and get
local?
started.
Is she local?
yeah.
She should be.
Okay.
Joining us from Kuala Lumpur, no.
Well,
No.
you never know. You know, don't.
I believe she's back.
Oh,
All right. So let's get started officially. I don't want to keep everyone, our guests waiting all evening. So we can fill in everyone else who joins late. So good evening, everyone. My name is Sandro Sharada. I am the chair of the Land Use and Waterfront Committee of Community Board 6 here in Manhattan. This is our June 22nd meeting. We should be live on YouTube as well. And I see we have some attendees in the Zoom as well. So that's great. We only have a few items on our agenda, but before we get to that, and we're starting now, it is 6:38, starting a few minutes late. But before we get to our agenda, just want to, and I'll introduce, I guess, our guests later, but I just wanted to thank our district manager, Jesus Perez, and our assistant district manager, Cody Osterman, who are helping pull this and all our other meetings together and actually doing an amazing job. So kudos to all of you. Thank you for your help. Before we go ahead and start with the attendance, did everyone have a copy of the minutes from the last meeting? I think those were circulated. Did we get that?
Yep.
Circular. Any objections to the minutes as they were circulated?
Not from me.
No. Okay. So if there are no objections, I'm still hearing no objections. If you have an objection, either raise your hand or let me know. Oops, wrong thing there. Just go ahead and no objections. Okay, so we'll consider them adopted, and maybe we can go to our roll call. I believe, Cody, are you going to take the roll call? Who's doing that?
Yes, 1 second, please. Let me pull that
Okay,
up. All right.
I can stall if you need.
I got it. Jim Collins, has he joined yet? Jim?
No, not yet.
Adam Hartke?
Present.
Kathleen Kelly?
Here.
Kavitha Matthew?
Here.
Sandra McKee?
Present.
Wells Magali? Is Wells joined? I don't see that, no. Gene Santoro?
Virtually here.
Larry Shire? Larry? I did see Larry a few moments ago. Did he fall off?
Larry,
Okay.
I don't think Larry has joined yet.
Yeah, I
Jim
didn't
was
see him.
here. Jim was here.
All right, Ann Seligman?
Here.
Lou Sapersky? Lou,
He
you need
was
to
here.
unmute yourself. He's here. He just needs
Lou
to
is
unmute
here. He's
himself.
muted.
Here.
Great. Sandra Sherrod
Yo.
and Letty Simon.
Yes.
Has Kathy joined yet? Kathy Thompson?
No, Kathy's trying to load Zoom on her tablet because it wasn't working on her phone.
Okay.
Okay. All
Thank
right.
you.
So you've got 9 members present. That is a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you. And Letty Simon is taking the minutes for us this evening. So thank you, Letty. That's always an important role that is a little difficult for people to take on when they first do it, but hopefully once they get into it, it is not hard. So thank you. And so we actually have a very short agenda. This has been kind of a difficult time having us meet virtually and try to get through everything. As you can see, there's literally one item other than just some minor housekeeping report items. And if there's any older new business, we can address them as well. So any objections to the agenda as seen before you, committee members? No? All right, great. So, yep, go ahead.
I want to put the,
Lou, you muted yourself. You started talking, I think, and then you muted. I can't hear you. Go ahead.
the Greenway caissons and related.
Okay, we'll talk about that under old business. Okay, thank you. So let's get back to our first item on the agenda and our main item. So we actually have a few representatives from DDC on the call. It looks like Ophelia is on, as well as we have Sarah from DPR. And I thought I saw someone else from DDC, but I don't see them on the list right now. So, yeah, no, Ophelia, I seem to see you multiple times on my list. Maybe it's just you. So maybe you can give us a brief update. I mean, we were very, concerned obviously with coronavirus and COVID-19 and the schedules on the impact of all of our mitigation and our waterfront projects. So if you can just kind of give us a high level status and what impact on both the construction as well as the funding and the timelines and everything, that'd be wonderful.
Sure. I shared the presentation with Cody or Jesus. Can you bring it up, please?
We're pulling it up now.
Thank you.
And welcome. I love that blue, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So good evening, everyone. My name, again, is Ophelia Rivas. I'm from DDC, Intergovernmental Affairs. Happy to be able here to present to the Land Use and Waterfront Committee tonight. And I'm joined by our project construction management team, HNTB Liro. They are responsible for managing the project's construction operations and also, as you mentioned, parks. Next slide, please. Thank you. So our goal is to continue to keep the community informed and provide updates. We finalized design at the end of last year, 2019. We started the pre-construction process earlier this year, which includes contract development, contract procurement, and specification review. And now we wanted to provide the community with updates on the construction timeline, project status, and community engagement strategies. Next slide, please. You can skip that one. Thank you. The project is not delayed. As I mentioned at the last meeting, we are currently scheduled to start substantial construction this fall as planned. Our previously planned spring construction was for the early package that got deferred to the fall per the community's request. Again, as of now, there hasn't been any impacts on the schedule's project, construction timeline, or funding. In addition, the project's design, procurement activities, and construction start have not been impacted as well by any COVID emergency response. Of course, like the rest of the agencies, the city agencies, we need to understand its overall impacts of COVID on major projects throughout, because as we all know, this pandemic has been extremely disruptive. And now to the right side of the slide, those are the 4 bid packages that we've been telling you throughout. The early package, which I've mentioned before, includes tree transplants and relocation of the Lessig compost yard operations, which we have deferred to the fall at the request of the community and will not begin until September. We made that promise. And we are currently coordinating with City Hall, Parks, and DSNY to determine a more precise timeframe for this package prior to fall construction. The contractor's notice to proceed, which was sent to CB6 and 3, I informed them that it was adjusted from August 31st to July 6th to allow the contractor to staff, pre-mobilize, and plan for the planting season just in time. So he has to get all this ahead. However, actual groundwork, shovels in the ground, will not take place prior to August 31st, as contractors are not able to commence work without authorization from DDC. The early package has remained unchanged, and the relocation of compost operations and trees planting remains the same as we discussed. For Project Area 2, or PA2, it's scheduled for mid-fall 2020 after the early package, which is when substantial construction will begin. As you know, PA2 is concentrated in CB6 and in the Stive Cove Park area. For Project Area 1, that is scheduled for November 2020 and is concentrated in CB3, with the first round of East River Park closures taking place in November, per the phasing plan that was presented to the community board last January. The last package is the parallel conveyance package, which is mostly its drainage infrastructure improvements located mainly inland and spread throughout the neighborhoods. And this will follow immediately after PA1. Next slide, please. Thank you. For the community engagement strategy, for the website, DDC is working on expanding the current project website to include comprehensive project information on both design and construction phases. We are currently in the development phase, working with Do It and our agency partners, and are aiming to launch the new website this summer prior to fall construction. The current website address, overall layout, and all existing information and documents will remain the same as you see now on the regular ESCR website. The updated website that we're working on will include new tabs, subpages with links to other city resiliency resources. It will also have links to the ESCR partner agencies such as Parks Interim Rec webpage and DOT Streets Impact webpage, offering supplemental information and updates that are specific to each agency's work in connection with ESCR. For social media, the social media will utilize DDC's existing social media platforms to roll out relevant project information, which will also be included on project communication materials. We are currently preparing draft content to start rolling out this summer prior to fall construction. All of this, once it's finalized, again, we'll come back to the community board to present and to provide the information. We're really excited about this web-based public tool, inquiry tool. DDC and HNTB Lero are developing an advanced inquiry and response management system for community members to receive project notifications and to submit concerns, comments, questions in regards to project construction impacts. The tool will assist the project team with public communications and stakeholder outreach efforts during construction. DDC will be utilizing this tool to manage stakeholder interactions with the project team for advisories, public forums, reports, responses, and event management. We will present the application and its feature, like the rest of the information, to the community board and the CAG prior to construction. CCLs, which I'll also talk about later, they'll be available in our community information center with iPads to assist you with the web-based inquiry tool. So I'm going to talk next about the community information center. We've reached out to the community boards to get their input on the best location, but I'm excited to let you know that if, say, someone's not comfortable with using the web-based tool, they can come into our information center and a CCL will have iPads and be available and help them fill it out. So that's exciting because we really want to, help the community and get their concerns down. For the community information center, again, we reach out to CB3 and CB6 because we want to use and choose a location that works best for both impacted communities. So we're assessing available commercial space in the project area for the CIC to utilize as a hub for project information and in-person community engagement. It's going to be staffed by local hires, administrative staff, and community construction liaisons, which is CCLs. The vision is to offer a space to host stakeholder meetings, CAG meetings, information sessions, resiliency and educational programs. And we're really excited. We want to work out a calendar where the community-based organizations, or even CB6 or CB3, if they want to use the space to hold their meetings, we're happy as long as, it's not conflicting with someone else's meeting. The goal is to lease a storefront for the duration of the construction phase that is readily accessible to overall the community impacted by the project. We are also assessing the current COVID-related rules to better understand the opening timeline and operations of the center, because we want to do this the right way and make sure that it's as safe as possible for residents to use. In terms of public engagement, we're working hand in hand with our consultants to reform strategies for public engagement, such as hosting virtual meetings. Speaking of which, we held the first introductory CAG meeting on Wednesday, June 17th, and we were thankful to have CB6 join us. Next slide, please. Thank you. Lastly, DOT asked us to share this link to city streets. If you have any questions or would like more information about their Open Streets program, please feel free to visit the link below or reach out to them directly, because we understand that it's a concern about, extra space during COVID and social distancing. So they want us to share the Open City Streets Open map with you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if actually at some point we could look at that, Jesus, if you want to click on the map. The map's very helpful. So thank you for the update. It's very good news that we actually are not significantly delayed because of everything going on. That's very impressive, because I know there's been a lot that has been delayed. So I'm very impressed that the Eastside Coastal Resiliency Project is still moving along at a good clip. So that's very, very good news. Are there any specific questions from the board members or the members of the public? If you do have one, you can raise your hand. Hopefully everyone knows how to use the raise hand feature. If you want, you can unmute yourself, but I would prefer if everyone could raise their hand just so we can kind of go through the names as they come up. Members of the public are also welcome to do so. I don't see any hands. Oh, there we go. There's one. I see Scott Baker. So I'm going to unmute you, Scott. You should be able to ask your question.
Hello, thank you for the presentation. I just wondered, because I lead biking groups around Manhattan, when the Lower East Side would be closed for work, if at all, or if there'll be detours.
Oh, so yeah, we looked into that in terms of, that's part of the plan. We're working with DOT for alternate bike lanes. So we're definitely working with DOT on that plan. We don't have anything to present yet, but as we move closer, we'll be back with DOT to present on that. So that is something, yeah, that we're looking at and we're taking into consideration.
But not in the fall, right?
No, not in the fall, not in the fall.
Okay.
In the
Okay,
fall, the first thing we start is the early package, which isn't that disruptive. It's mostly tree transplanting, removing the compost yard. But as we progress in the construction, then we'll have more tight plans. And once the contractor is on board, then he can submit his plans, and then we're going to check. So yeah, we're definitely taking consideration, and no need to worry. That'll be part of the plan, and we're going to talk to present that to everyone.
Okay, excellent.
And I'll make sure to just, again, bring it back to the table and, again, bring it back to DOT's attention that this is a consideration.
Okay, so next we had Larry and then I think Adam. So Larry, go ahead and ask your question.
Sure. I had two questions. One, which I think you started to answer, and that related to the plan for bypass of the obstruction point at the Con Ed plant. Do you have any early idea about what that's going to look like? And then the second thing related to the signage that would direct people to the ferry, and how that would be provided for, because nothing's been done by DOT in the local streets since we last spoke about this.
So we are working on signage, definitely. Desiree, you could speak more to the signage plans that are being worked out.
Sure. I know DDC is working in coordination with the Parks Department for internal signage. I think maybe what Larry is talking about is more the street signage, like DOT signage. So we'll have to get back to you with more information on that specifically. But there definitely will be signage throughout the project, making the community aware of where the detours are. And through the website, there will be a lot of information as well.
Yeah.
Well, there also was the idea of permanent signage that is lacking now, that would let people know, about the existence of Stuyvesant Cove Park and the location of the ferry, and the way to get in there. We've been trying without success with DOT to address some existing signs that are just in the wrong place, pointing in the wrong direction.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think we talked in our resolution, we actually had a section that addressed a little bit of that. So it's a whole length of that piece of the waterfront right across from the FDR Drive Service Road, but particularly around the Murphy's Brothers Park, where there is some signage that's very circuitous. It doesn't really point you in the right direction because it's a difficult crossing to navigate for pedestrians. So yeah, I think as we're rethinking the whole experience of the space going forward, we definitely want to make sure that the permanent signage is also very clear and very helpful in terms of getting people to the different amenities like the actual ferry and the park that they could be taking advantage of.
And there's also the a discussion of moving the north crosswalk at that entrance.
Yep.
And I don't know whether any study has been done about the feasibility of moving those traffic lights.
Yeah, this sounds like a DOT thing that we should follow up with.
And then
but yeah,
you can send me the resolution and I can take this back to DOT because they're our agency partners, so that's not a problem. Yeah.
It was the one where we actually voted on the entire East Side Coastal Resiliency Project, but yeah, we'll be happy to recirculate it and kind of bring that back up to the front.
Yes.
Thank you.
Right, and of course the first question was about how you would route cyclists and runners when Captain Patrick J. Brown Walk is closed.
Yeah, that's going to be part of the plan. We're going to present that and we're going to work with DOT to reroute all the streets and I can follow up and have DOT, they should present as well to speak on that. So
thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to Adam. Oh, I think I just, sorry.
There we go. We good?
Yeah, you're good.
Excellent. So when will the first sort of permanent signage alerting users of the park start to go up, basically alerting them that something big is coming? Right now there is a heavy presence of people using the park. Obviously it's summer and limited options, etc. during these times. But if I were to guess, a lot of the joggers and a lot of the users or whatnot, despite the vast amount of public outreach, still have no idea that a massive sort of disruption is coming their way. So when do we expect to see the first big signs that basically like big changes are coming soon? Check out our website or visit our community center.
So right now we don't have that plan to present, and I can't speak to that question. We will have that. Again, we're gonna have signage, and we're also gonna have with Parks website, like with the ERCR website, we're gonna have a direct link to Parks where they'll have which park area is closed, which park is open. So we're definitely going to make that available to the community. It's just in the works right now.
Okay, thanks.
But just in terms of sequencing,
back here to present and show you all the tools and how you can know when the park is closed, when it's open, how to access that information. That is something that we're taking into consideration, and it's on our list, like a promise, the original promise list that we had for ESCR.
Right, but just in terms of sequencing, signage to let people know that these resources will be available, they're planning to go up before we actually take the part of the parks that are going into construction phases out of service, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
That was in the ground. Yeah, before we start tearing parts of the park and going phase plans, there will be signage, and we hope to have the website up running by then. Social media is another way where we're going to publish what areas are closed, what's open. So we promise to blast the community and keep them informed on what's happening. We don't want to keep you in the dark. We definitely want.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, we have a couple more months. We have the summer, right, before Project Area 2 really has some construction. But I just wanted to make sure, because sometimes those little things are the sequencing. One thing doesn't always happen before the other. So we do have, so I think Jesus has a link to the map that Sarah provided. Jesus, is that link a live link that we can just drop into the chat? So if anyone's interested, they can follow along on their own?
Sorry, I didn't unmute myself. Yes,
Right.
Sarah from Parks already did that. So if you
Oh,
look in the
okay,
chat, it's
wonderful. I
already there.
missed it.
I can already put it. I can put it back there as well.
No,
and
if as long as someone did. No, yeah, I see Sarah did. Thank you. I missed that where she put the link. I
just
didn't have the
scroll down
window.
a bit. It's like the bike lane map, but the open streets are highlighted in green, I believe.
Yeah. So make sure everyone has had a chance to see the open streets map. It's very nice. Any other questions from anyone? Okay.
Ophelia, by the way, that link in your presentation doesn't lead us to that site. That may be something you guys want to.
Okay, I'll circle back with DOT.
Okay.
And then I'll email you, Jesus, and then you can provide it to the community board.
Well, we have Sarah was just able to give us the correct link, so that's okay. But just for future reference, yeah, that link doesn't seem to be good.
Right.
But we can definitely make sure. Jesus, I don't know, do we have this available on the website and maybe in our newsletter? This would be a good resource if it's not already there.
We can certainly put it there, and I believe we do have an open streets page on our website. Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So probably a good plug to drive everyone. So we actually have kind of a revamped website. So a lot of these resources are available, but I have not come across all of them myself yet. So I'll go check it out. Thank you. So yeah, if there's nothing further, I don't see any further questions. And if there's nothing further, I think I just want to thank Ophelia and Sarah and Desiree and everyone for just coming and giving us this update. We're very much looking forward, obviously, to seeing this project come to fruition. Obviously, it's going to take a while, so just trying to fully understand the disruption and the mitigation plan to ensure that we have still access to whatever resources are possible is kind of on the forefront of our mind. So thank you all for taking the time to do that.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you're welcome to stay. Enjoy the rest of your evening, though, if you're leaving.
Good night, all. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we have just a couple minor things that I wanted to go over first. And most importantly, we had kind of an issue brought up, and Sandy, I think, and a couple others had brought this up via email to us, and those of us who have been wandering around the district for whatever reason, shopping, working, whatever it is, have noticed that the open space pops, not the ones that are internal to a building, but the ones that are open space or out of doors, were not fully accessible in many occasions. And so Sandy, did you want to speak a little bit about the ones that you came across, just to kind of give us an example of some of the issues that you saw?
Certainly, there are several that I've noticed. One is on 2nd Avenue and 46th Street, and it's a great location to socially distance. I think Anne's very familiar with this, and Kathy as well. But it's been closed the whole time, and it's very frustrating because it's such a great space, and especially now it's shady, so it's another good one. Just recently, they closed 49th Street and 2nd Avenue, which was completely open. It didn't have a fence, and now it's completely blocked off. There's another one that's up on, I think it's on 59th Street, which is quite often closed anyway, but it has been closed now as well. And yeah, the first two had fences already, which they locked at night. The one at 49th and 2nd doesn't have a fence, so they had to actually build something to close it off.
Right. So so we reached out to Scott Williamson, who is actually a city planner, but who also is joining us this evening. I will add him to the list of people who can talk. Oh, he's already been added. Everyone's so fast here. And so we did reach out to Scott just to kind of confirm that, of course, while there is social distancing and still limited access whenever possible to prevent the transmission of coronavirus, open space that is open and doesn't really prevent you from doing any sort of social distancing should still be accessible to the public. And Scott was able to confirm that. Scott, I don't know if you want to kind of elaborate a little bit.
No, I mean, in short, this is kind of evolving for us as well, how POPs are going to be dealt with through this time. I guess the important takeaway there is what, Sandra, you had already sort of highlighted, is that outdoor spaces should very much be remaining open, and the city is very reliant on those for physical distancing kind of purposes. But indoor spaces have generally been allowed to close for obvious reasons. But where you do notice spaces perhaps not remaining open or closing for undisclosed reasons, we would certainly be interested in knowing about that, and we can look into it further for you. And I mean, there's a lot of discussions going on about how POPs could be effectively utilized during this time, particularly over the summer as well, which I mean, you may see more things coming out in relation to how those POPs can be used in the near future. So those discussions continue, but as they do happen and as they're sort of decided on by City Hall, we'll update you as well.
So I see a couple of hands up around this item. So let's start with Anne. Anne, did you want to ask a question? You can unmute yourself.
I have to say, I am very familiar with the issue. I hadn't realized that they had closed the one at 49th Street. But, the thing about the POPs at 46th Street is this is not a new situation. And DOB or DCP had told us probably 2 months ago that, yes, in fact, they were supposed to be open for their usual hours, and that, DOB, who does the enforcement, would look into it. Through various confusions, DOB went to the wrong place, went to Dag Hammarskjöld, which of course doesn't actually have a fence. So I don't know what they thought of why someone was complaining that was closed, but that's a different story. Anyway, they haven't come back since, but there has never been any question that it was legal for them to be closed. And in fact, when I speak to the management or speak to the building, like this staff at the building, every time you talk to them, they will tell you a different story. They will say, well, it's regulations. We don't have the people. We don't feel it's safe. I mean, it's just, there's no coherent story. They just don't want to do it because they don't like maintaining it. They don't even have the fountain on in there, which has nothing to do really. I mean, that's a thing that even if there were no people in there, it would cool the area. And so, it's something that they should be doing. And I know Brandon in the office has tried to reach out to management. They have been incredibly unresponsive. So, Scott, while I appreciate your looking into this, I feel like it's kind of already been looked into and they're just being non-compliant. And I guess my question is, what are the enforcement? I'll tell you, I have pictures of this being closed, not every day, of course, but many times, not just since the pandemic started, but for years when they just sort of randomly keep it closed. And so what I'd like to know is, first of all, actually, I'd love to know specifically, and this is a question we can take offline, kind of what benefits did they get at this building for, for building that plaza? And so that's kind of one thing. But also, what are if they don't do what they say they're going to do, are there fines? Are there, kind of what are the consequences? Because as far as I can tell, there aren't any.
So to your second question, the consequences are that if they are found to be in non-compliance, they're given a ticket. and that's DOB's standard enforcement mechanism. There is instances where perhaps they're already working with city planning to rectify an issue where perhaps they wouldn't automatically be given a ticket because they're already on the path to rectifying it. But otherwise, if DOB catches them doing something wrong, then the immediate action there is that they're given a ticket for it. To the first part of your question, I'm not too sure of the site you're referring to there. I think you mentioned it was on 46th Street, but I mean, nothing relating to POPs has sort of come through me in the last couple months. And generally, I would be coordinating with our POPs liaison, who then goes to DOB. So definitely any of those sites that were listed just now, happy to,
that is one of those sites. And maybe you and Scott, you and Brendan and I can talk about this offline and make sure that you do have the information about that.
And what site were you talking about? Which site were you talking?
46th Street and 2nd Avenue.
So Anne, actually, you could talk offline, but it'd be good if you kind of went through the office. What we're trying to do is keep a track on all these items. Yes, that's what I mean, the
three of us, including the office in that. Yeah.
Okay, absolutely. I didn't hear my name. Sorry. I just want to make.
Not your name. I was thinking to have Brendan in the office.
Oh, Brendan. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's fine. Yeah. So what we're trying to do is keep track of spaces that are seemingly non-compliant so that we can kind of internally know that, as well as city planning. We're of course going to pass that information on to city planning. Thank you. So next was Kathy.
Hi, I just want to, Anne did a beautiful job of describing that particular pocket park, but just some background information additional to that you should know. The building, Dog Hammarskjöld Plaza, 240 East 47th Street, the condo, is the ones who have the keys to it. And I know this, don't ask me how I know this, but the board has instructed the super not to open that park. They know very well what they're doing. They have done this for years. They are openly hostile. I know, again, I know this from an inside information standpoint, that they intentionally do this knowing that there is no repercussion to it. I understand one of the reasons, because it fills up with the drug dealers and the drug users, but on the off times when those people are not there, everybody else wants to use the park. But they are actively doing this. This whole befuddlement between various agencies talking about we have to look into it and this, that, the other is irrelevant. They are willfully, the board is willfully instructing the super not to allow the guy who is always out there, we see him every day sweeping the sidewalk, not to let him open the park. So it's way beyond, you know, just mouthy. It's really, it's active. I don't know. Anyway, that's it.
Okay, thank you. So next we have Sandy.
And I just wanted to say there seems to be quite an uptick in POPs that are under construction. So I don't know if that's somehow related, like somehow they put up a fence and say under construction and then block access. So maybe that's another thing we should actually document on the form that we're preparing.
Okay. So thank you. When you say form, so I actually just dropped it into the chat link. So it's a bit.ly link, and it's COVID POPs all highlighted, I mean, all uppercase rather. And if you complete that, it's just a very simple form. You don't have to fill out anything more than where what POPs you're referring to, what conditions you saw that prevented public access. And if you can put your name just so we can follow up if there's any further information. And if you do have pictures, like was mentioned earlier, whether it's a chain link fence or a padlock or whatever it is, it might be helpful to forward that also to the office so that we have some record of that, and we can reach out to city planning and see what the next steps we might take and have that as part of our record. So thank you. I see Larry's hand up, and then Anne's hand is back up. So we'll go to Larry first.
Yes. Now, what can the board do, at least the board office, by way of writing a letter or some other kind of a communication with it, let's say a co-op board, to inquire as to maybe they have reasons why what we've observed from the outside, and maybe don't actually understand correctly, why this is going on. And it also would serve to show that the community has an interest and is watching them.
It's a good question. So I think we have to be cautious because we're not really in the enforcement game, right? So
Well,
we don't want to be perceived as that.
Well, that's why I said asking questions isn't the same thing as handing somebody a summons.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we do have contacts with a lot of different boards, neighborhood associations that would be helpful in figuring out how we can get it open. I think in the past, the board office has been able to broker conversations with different groups so that we can try to alleviate the problem, not necessarily just go to city planning and try to get it fixed through those means, but also just having a conversation and figuring out how we can get to that common ground. So hopefully, with us understanding where the problems are, we can figure out how we can or cannot go down that path. I think it's going to vary on a case-by-case basis, of course, but in many of these cases, we do have good working relationships where we can just try that as the first step. That's an excellent point. Thank you, Larry. Anne, did you have?
Okay, I promise I'll be
no, it's
quicker
okay.
this
I mean,
time.
this is mostly it, I think, at this point. But go ahead.
Okay, so I guess one thing I would say, and I'm so delighted to see this reporting form. And frankly, every time I walk by that, I will put it on. Because you know what, Larry, all due respect, they, like Kathy said, they just don't want to. I will, and I kind of hope this is okay, but I will literally submit that every day so that we see that this is an everyday problem, not that it's something that once a week they leave it open. And so I'm sorry if that kind of puts more work on, who's ever managing the spreadsheet at the other end of the form. But I do think it's important to document the frequency of it. So I'd encourage everybody to do that. I think this is great just because it's something, it'll be a resource for the board. But I have to say also, one of the things that I found really frustrating is that there's really no way to report problems with POPs on 311. There's nothing on the app. And if you call, I know 311 operators deal with a lot of obscure stuff, but no one knows what a POPs is, right? If you call and complain about this. And even when you look at complaints and things like that in like the open data, New York open data, and there's tons of great data out there about all kinds of stuff. There's nothing about POPs compliance. And so I've been wondering if there isn't some way to get that incorporated into kind of one of those platforms. Presumably 311 is the place to start.
It should be. Scott, is there any traction in trying to formalize the 311 process? How does that work? Would city planning need to engage like a routing sheet through 311? Do you know? Wait, is Scott not? He's not able to talk. Sorry about that.
Sorry, I dropped out for a minute there. So I think your question there was on reporting in 311.
Yeah, so Anne was saying that she's called several times 311, and basically the staff do not know how to route complaints or concerns around POPs to city planning or to anyone for that matter.
Right.
Also that it isn't included. Nothing about POPs is included in the 311 app, which is.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. I haven't heard that before, but happy to follow up on it. I mean, ultimately, whether you go through 311 for a POPs complaint or through city planning or me personally, it should be being filtered through our enforcement arm, which is DOB. So, I mean, there should be a number of routes there, and I would certainly expect 311 is one of those. So let me ask around and see what the experience is of our POP specialists on that.
And there actually is a form for 311 to submit a complaint against a POP. It's not super easy to find, but I'm going to put the link in the chat right here.
I just found it
And
myself. Yeah.
It's hidden away a little bit. We're also, what we can do, if it's helpful, we can mock up some sort of item for our next newsletter that comes out in about a week and a half, and we can encourage folks who live around POPs to pay closer attention. They may have never noticed, and we can provide them the link for complaining about closed POPs and also explain to them why it's an issue.
Yep. And so hopefully you're going to put this link on your daily to-do list.
And if you do submit a complaint to 311, please send the complaint number to help@cbsix.org.
And so, Jean, did you have a question?
Not really. That sort of the response sort of covered it. I was going to suggest that because the POPs came into being over 3 decades with very different rules and regulations governing them, that might be some of the problem about processing the complaints about them. But I saw the link too that you found, so that'll work.
Okay, Letty?
Just a suggestion about advancing this a little bit. Is this something that might be brought up at the borough board with all the community board chairs, and let the borough president try and do something, because she's pretty effective as well.
Yeah, well, it definitely feels like the process of filing a complaint and following up on them should be a little less opaque. So there is a page, as Jesus and I just found, but
Right.
It is not readily accessible, and it's not the first thing that you find, nor apparently is it the first thing that the knowledge base article reference is not the first thing that the 311 staff finds either. So there's something that needs to be done to include this in the actual support mechanism for 311. All right, let's move to Kathleen.
Hi, yeah, I had just typed in the chat, like moving forward for the future development of POPs in the board area, how can we be proactive to put into the POPs agreement how buildings will handle issues they have with managing POPs before developers are given the go-ahead? Because it kind of sounds like maybe some designs do better than others in terms of not attracting some of the issues that they have. Because if I lived in a building and I was attracted, drug users and drug dealers, I honestly wouldn't be happy with that myself. So that's why I'm just wondering, like, do some areas when they're developed do better than others? Or do you need to have cameras installed or some kind of, plan in place, because this is something that happens in the POPs?
So yeah, so I'm not going to, obviously there's some obvious crimes that might happen like in any other place, whether it's public or private. But I will say that since the inception of the POPs program, it's changed dramatically. So when the POPs first were pulled into fruition, there was very little in terms of rules and regulations and requirements. It's gotten a lot more focused, I think, in recent years, and I think that's to the betterment of the public as well as the landlords and those who take advantage of the POPs bonuses. I don't know, Scott, if you want to speak a little bit to this, but I feel like this is a little bit more of there were contractual limitations placed on some, and others had different contractual limitations, and that kind of complicates the matter.
Yeah, so I mean, CV6 probably has the widest range of historic POPs from back when the program was initiated up to now, and as you mentioned, Sandro, it has evolved hugely. So we definitely do get a lot of POPs coming in where they're trying to sort of make design improvements, and that's primarily for the reasons of security. So some owners who are just sort of being more reactive may come in and seek to be sort of enclosing their space, which obviously city planning is sort of active in trying to push back on, deliberate sort of security means or aggressive architecture and things like that. But that is definitely a difficult conversation to have in the scheme of the older spaces, which were far less regulated their design attributes and things like that. A lot of them have sort of blind corners. Some of them already have gates built in and spikes and things like that. And that is certainly something that we sort of continue to deal with and try and implement good design with. As far as the newer pop spaces that you see coming through, they are definitely designed and partially because our pop specialists and our urban designers are so heavily involved in the development of those spaces that there's far less sort of opportunities for those kind of dead corners and things like that, where there is opportunities for crime and things like that. An immediate example that comes to mind for me is the American Copper Building pop space, which is a relatively new one, but that incorporates contemporary urban design principles that take into account security and passive surveillance and things like that. But yeah, you're certainly not wrong in thinking that a lot of owners want to close or limit access to their spaces based upon varying security concerns. But I would say that the legislation that they are required to adhere to now to get access to the bonuses and things that they benefit from are significantly improved to try and deal with situations like this.
Great. I mean, were there any other concerns from the board members that in the more recent ones, for example, that there wasn't really adequate control or adequate framework, I should say, for the developers to make these spaces accessible? I know we had a little bit of a discussion about a year ago on POPs, mostly around signage, but it did crop up a little bit. If anyone had any other feelings on the matter? Let's see any hands up. Okay. So, I mean, I think that's something we should think about a little bit. Oh, I do see one hand, Jean. But just before you speak, I do think it's something we should think about, because ensuring, in a dense area like East Midtown, we really do need to ensure that there's some space to the public that's not just the crosswalk. And so accessibility, I think, is crucial, because if we're going to have these spaces built, it really doesn't make sense for them not to go used by the public at all, or on such a restricted way that some of them are being limited to. So yeah, I think this is something we should think about and figure out if there's any sort of improvement or safeguards. And it obviously, if it's crime, I mean, there are other ways to address it, ensuring that there's adequate patrols and passive and active limitations put to prevent crime. So anyway, Gene?
Yeah, thanks. No, I just wanted to thank you for taking my offhand observation and turning it into something more useful. Yeah, the way these things evolved over 30, 40 years means that they were built under a lot of different regulations and a lot of different covenants, let's say. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we need now is for the city to somehow regularize those things for as many of the spaces as possible, because we need those spaces. We have the least amount of park space, the mantra of any district in New York, and the POPs. In fact, we have among the most POPs, and these are effectively are open spaces for people to use. So we need the city to please find out a way to regularize how you are regulating them. And a ticket, unless it's for a substantial amount, is not going to be prodding any owners of these spaces to do anything. So there has to be a better way to try to get them to comply with what they were originally supposed to do. That would be my point.
All right, it's good feedback. Let's see if we can formulate that as well. Maybe not this evening, but in terms of like a resolution, maybe some thoughts of how to actually execute that. But yeah, Scott, if you can take that back to the team at City Planning and see if there's any thinking that maybe we could work to advance, if it's a legislative change or some other change that we can look to kind of advance for city planning. And Scott, did you have another question? Scott Baker, I'm sorry. Scott, I see your hand's gone up. So yes, you can ask your question.
Yes. Since we're talking about parks, thinking a little bigger, two questions. Will we ever be able to use the UN Park again And also, when will 60 to 53rd Street on the Greenway start construction? Phase 2, Andrew Haswell Green Park.
I don't think we have an actual date for that right now. And in terms of the UN, obviously they have strong security concerns that they've been using for some time to limit access. But our committee normally doesn't deal with parks proper. We're dealing with parks, in this case, really just along the waterfront and where they kind of intersect. Like, so POPs are not really a park, although it seems like a park. It's kind of a land use byproduct, I guess. So that's why we've been addressing it. But I think we can definitely talk. So some of us, Molly, Sandy, some of us can actually bring that back. I think see where we are, if there's any further development, kind of with the UN Development Council and corporation rather, and where that's going in terms of access to those spaces.
Okay, and the Greenway part too?
Yeah, I don't think we have a date, and we don't have anyone from EDC on this evening who can directly address that. But
Sandra,
that's
we can reach out to EDC. The
yeah.
last time they were presented before this committee, they did say that that project, the Greenway project, was paused until the governor's directive against non-essential construction was lifted. My guess is that has now been lifted, so we can just double check with them that maybe that's moving.
Is that part of phase 2? I don't know if that's actually, I don't know if non-essential construction was part of phase 1 or phase 2 or 3. I don't remember. But yeah, if we can get an official word and get that back to Scott Baker, I think that'd be great.
Because I heard somewhere that they might, if that's Hurricane Sandy money, that might get, it might disappear if we go past the deadline.
No, that's so the Hurricane Sandy, the federal funding, that was really, that's the East Side Coastal Resiliency Project that we were talking about earlier. Oh. The one that's further north is not the Hurricane Sandy.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. All right, so anyone else with any questions before we move on to old business? Okay, so I think we only had one item of old business, and that was, Lou, you wanted to bring up the caissons again? Lou, you're still muted. I can't unmute you, unfortunately. It's not possible. You have to do it yourself.
Better?
There you go. Yep, I can hear you now.
Not only the caissons, it would be nice if the Economic Development Corporation could be invited to come to the committee and explain what planning went into the removal of the caissons south of 59th Street. They are all gone, as we have noticed. The recitation was that they were somehow deficient, in spite of the fact that the work on when they were left standing from the reliever road was that they were filled with concrete and rebars and were designed to last 100 years. If there is something going to be done in terms of replacing what was removed, that ought to be discussed with the board. We ought to know what proposals are out there, what plans, because we should be involved. We're a planning board by definition and by our founding charter. We ought to find out what designs are being considered. We ought to involve the community in hearing what the plans are for the future. It ought to be a serious discussion of future plans, of community outreach, other agency outreach, because the caissons were not just a function of the Economic Development Corporation, but there were 2 or 3 federal agencies, 2 or 3 state agencies, and several city departments all involved in the planning and retention of the caissons. And I think if there is going to be something that's going to happen with the Greenway from 59th to 52nd Streets, we ought to start asking people to come in and discuss that with us. And we should be an active participant in the planning, and the community should be thoroughly informed as to what is going on and what is planned, and to take into account the reaction of the neighborhood.
Okay, Sandy?
Sorry. Lou, there are actually 3 caissons remaining.
North of 59th, yes.
So my understanding is that some of the caissons were removed because technically they could not be utilized. So they have not removed all of the caissons. So it really does not seem like this is an issue that we should be delving into. It's a technical issue for how the greenway is going to be built. I don't know that the community, I mean, it's not that they have just taken away all of the caissons. Some are still there.
The caissons that are remaining on north of 59th Street, that's Community Board 8. But in fact, if they're planning a replacement for the caissons that from 52nd to 59th Streets, that's exactly why we should be involved. It's a matter of record that Community Board 6 dealt with the state for 2 or 3 years to retain the west line of caissons from the reliever road that had been built as part of the work project on the Franklin Roosevelt Drive from 52nd to 60th Streets.
Sorry, Lou, sorry to interrupt. There are 3 caissons left that are south of the bridge.
Yeah.
9th Street Bridge. The bridge is on 59th Street, right? So there are 3 caissons south of the bridge.
Yeah, they're between 59th and 60th.
They're south of the bridge, so I'm assuming that's below 59th.
Even if they are in Board 6, the caissons south of 59th Street are gone, and something's going to have to replace them. As a planning board, and that is part of our charter mandate, that's part of the reason we exist, we should be involved in the discussion and planning for what is to replace them. We're starting, if you will, with a blank slate, and the board has been involved in the Greenway project, heaven knows, over 20 years.
Right.
We now have regressed, and if we're going to go forward and see the Greenway, if there's going to be planning, then we should be actively and consistently involved, and the community, through us, should be actively and consistently aware of what is planned.
So we have, been involved in the planning, and there has been discussions with the various agencies, and due to their technical analysis, they did not feel that all of the caissons were actually required for structural support of the plan that we were involved in. We don't normally have, a direct process in the technicalities of operations or execution, and we would not be normally reviewing like engineering documents, more just giving guidance and leadership. I see Gene has his hand up, so I'm gonna call on Gene. Gene has the floor, Lou.
Yeah, I was just going to basically say what Sandra just said. I don't know about you, but my engineering degree is very rusty. We do expect the agencies to comply with showing us their plans and having full and detailed discussion of those plans. But other than that, the engineering decisions that they make about what caissons are usable and why is fully within their purview and really has nothing to do with us as a non-engineering board, I would suggest.
Quite the contrary. We are a planning board by our foundation. We were created as a planning board, and that is part of our fundamental mission. And just as a matter of historic record, Community Board 6, 4 different chairs acting jointly met with the state to deal with the issues of the caissons and related when the reliever road was put in place. We don't necessarily have the technical expertise, but we can invite the Economic Development Corporation to come in and make a presentation now as to what is planned. And if we need technical expertise and technical help, we can reach out and get it. That's part of our basic core mission. We are, if you read the charter, we are a planning.
So Lou, thank you, Lou, thank you.
Our planning mission. issues.
Okay, thank you, Lou. You don't have to keep saying planning. I heard you. So we did reach out to EDC, and they will be coming back in the near future to talk about the plan for execution once they can resume construction. So we're going to find out about that and try to get them to come back and give us that update.
I may suggest we ought to invite EDC to come to our next meeting and to be prepared to spend some time to hear what they have to say. And if they have to bring technical experts with them to make a presentation and to explain to us what's planned, then we ought to be willing to do that. That's our mission.
We'll definitely be inviting EDC again. They were invited previously, and they'll be invited again to give us an update on the plan.
Well,
absolutely.
Why not start with the next meeting?
We'll invite them to the next meeting. I have no problem with that. They were invited to this meeting, actually. They didn't have an update as yet. So we'll invite them again.
And more than that, we ought to utilize some of the past resources of the board and find out if some of our former members are willing to serve as technical experts to help us on some of the issues that we're not conversant with, engineering being one of them. But we do have people who have a background in this and might conceivably be willing to take on a little help and give us the help so that we are able to make informed judgments. And more than that, we ought to be able to invite the community in to hear early what is being considered so that the community's input is part of the decision-making process, not something presented late and becomes contentious and the source of friction.
Yep, good points, good points. Okay, all right, thank you, Lou. So if there's no further old or new business, I think we are wrapping up then. Adam, did you have a question?
Sorry, yeah, I had a new business
Okay.
item. That's okay.
Sure.
So I just want to follow up with the presentation that we heard earlier today from the various groups regarding ESCR. I think it might be a good idea to not just forward the our resolution prior, but maybe have Molly or somebody write a letter to the project team, basically re-emphasizing some of the requests that we asked in terms of, mitigation, open space, other things of that nature, to make it a little bit more official, and also to say that as you're planning for this, we're actively seeking this out, and we want to continue to be partners in working with this, et cetera.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I'll work with Molly. I don't know if Molly's stepped away or not, but I'll work with her to get something out the door.
Great, thanks.
Yep.
I'm still here.
Oh, okay. Molly, if you need
Yep,
assistance,
got it.
we'll figure out how to get that together.
Okay,
Anne?
I was just wondering if we anticipated having any meetings over the summer?
So I think we would probably, basically, normally in July and August, we don't meet unless there is a ULURP or some other necessity that actually requires it. At this point, there has been, a kind of a quelling on unnecessary meetings across the board, obviously, because not when I say across the board, across the city, not really across our board, but across the city.
Across the board.
Because of everything going on, and we're trying to get business done when necessary, but of course, trying not to put people in situations they don't need to be in at this point. So right now, I don't have anything ULURP related that's been identified to us that's going to be hitting, the street, as it were, in the next couple of months. But should anything manifest, we'll definitely be giving notice. So, but to Lou's point, that we have some ongoing issues with the Midtown Greenway, the coastal resiliency. So I think that might be worthy of an update or two. I don't know that we'll necessarily need to have the land use committee convene just for that. There doesn't seem like there's any major changes afoot, but if there is a change afoot, we'll definitely want to circulate that. So so stay tuned. Right now, nothing planned. But one other thing that we will have to do is, we'll have to be looking at our budget priorities. So I'd like to actually see if we can get that started, informally, if you can all just look at it, go through them. So one of the issues of concern that came up when we started discussing this at the executive committee, for example, is that obviously we're in an interesting budget crisis caused by everything going on. And while that is the case, we still want to look at our budget priorities, not just for this current fiscal condition, but the future fiscal conditions, and help the agencies set forth their priorities accordingly. So don't feel that just because our city and state is not, awash with money, that we should now not have any budget priorities. We still need to figure out, when we do have the ability to work on these things, where they need to be worked on. So I'd like if everyone can take a look at, I believe there's an Airtable link. I don't know if we circulated recently, but I'll be happy to work with the board staff to make sure that we have the updated link that does focus on the land use and waterfront items that we can circulate so everyone is familiar with them, and we can be prepared to vote on it when we do next meet. So
Sandra will distribute the link. I'll send it tomorrow morning.
Thank you very much, Cody. Thank you. All right. So if there's nothing further, I don't see any more hands going once, going twice. Okay, if there's nothing further, I guess we'll be adjourned at 7:48. Thank you all. Hopefully you had a wonderful Father's Day, those of you who celebrated it, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Have a great summer, everyone.
Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.